This episode was recorded live during one of our weekly meetups with Finland's network of government designers. Every Thursday, about 70 of us get together to learn from each other or hear from guest speakers. When it's my turn to host, I like to switch things up a bit. Instead of having a formal presentation, I sit down for a live interview. We record these chats during the session, and now I'm sharing them as part of the podcast. After my interview, we open it up to questions from the rest of the group. Today's guest is Idil Gaziulusoy, a design researcher originally from Turkey, now based here in Finland. She is a professor of sustainable design at Aalto University, and in this conversation, we dug into her work on long-term systematic change. She walked us through a project her research group is participating, ICOS Cities, an EU-funded initiative. I especially wanted to talk about this project because ICOS, the Integrated Carbon Observation System, is actually the research infrastructure where I work. My name is Mariana Salgado. This is Diseño y Diáspora.
My name is Idil, and I am Associate Professor of Sustainable Design in Aalto University. I'm an interdisciplinary researcher. I'm both a sustainability scientist and a design researcher, and my research is at the intersection of these very broad fields on their own. I'm particularly interested in long-term structural systemic changes that are known as sustainability transformations.
What are these long-term systemic transformations?
Yeah, well, so as we all know, we are standing at a very interesting historical moment in civilized human society's history. Very troubled. Climate change, biodiversity crisis are being the two big, very kind of global problems, and then there are all sorts of other sustainability problems, including food systems not being sustainable, soil health, myriads of problems. So sustainability transformations research deals with questions of how can we transform our socio-technical, ecological systems to become sustainable, resilient, and just. What kind of futures there are, or there can be, that are sustainable, resilient, and just, as well as desirable for all of the stakeholders. And these are quite long-term processes, decades, but the shortest time frame in these transformations is decades, but they will unfold much longer. They're essentially, in order for us to become sustainable, resilient, and just, structural changes are needed. Kind of really, institutional societies, institutions need to change. There needs to be sociocultural changes. There needs to be political, economic changes, etc. So very kind of big picture systemic changes are needed, so that our kind of provisional systems that meet our needs as a society, such as mobility, energy, etc., can be transformed as well. So they are very structural, long-term transformations. They essentially, require institutional changes, and therefore there's a lot of kind of shifting of power required. And the kind of ultimate aim is to shift human society from its unsustainable mode with its core causes into a mode that is sustainable. So these are radical long-term changes.
So let's go to an example, no? And I wanted to dig into a project, well, one thing, because otherwise maybe it's difficult to grasp what you do or what your research group is doing. The people here, they might know that I work in ICOS, the Integrated Carbon Observation System, and Idil has been working in one project in which I have not been working, and I'm super interested in getting to know what have you been doing for ICOS Cities, or what is ICOS Cities? Yes.
ICOS Cities is a 4-year long project, and this is the final year. It's actually ending at the end of this year. And it is funded by European Union's Horizon 2020, specifically Green Deal kind of instrument. And it is a very large consortium project led by ICOS. It has multiple objectives, but primarily doing scientific innovation related to the carbon observation system, that is ICOS. And then while doing so, making those scientific innovations relevant for policy context. So it's a very large consortium. We have more than 40 partners, and there is, majority of the partners are atmospheric scientists, and then there is social scientists, and there is also us, design researchers. Scientists are trying to do scientific innovation in relation to how to improve, how to make better real-life observation in urban areas, extending, because there is already an infrastructure. So in this project, one of the aims was to kind of expand that infrastructure in urban areas, and also improve the kind of the observation system, so that attribution of emissions could be done better. Attribution meaning, part of these emissions come from this system, such as mobility, and part of it comes from this system, kind of thing. But our role, I would just simply, I think, metaphorically define it as being a bridge between science and policymaking.
Exactly. What do you bring for making this bridge? I guess I understood you have been working with prototypes. What type of things are there?
Yes. So our output objective, written in the proposal, is developing a portfolio of service prototypes for ICOS data to be useful for climate policymakers in cities. So we have been working towards developing those service prototypes. But before coming to developing service prototypes, there was quite a lot of preliminary or preparatory work, starting with, first of all, these services exist. So we did a benchmarking of what kind of services exist, specifically in European cities.
Can you give us an example just to be in the concrete side? What could it be a service there?
So these services, well, Helsinki City had, it doesn't have any more, but any citizen or anyone in Helsinki City could go to this website and could play with the website to understand, what are the climate action goals of Helsinki City and what has been achieved within a given year, for example, through what kind of means. So that is one service example. But these services can take multiple forms. And also in our benchmarking, we have realized that these services exist, or when I say these services that link data with societal stakeholders. So different societal stakeholders can benefit from this data. So there are also, services that are tailored for citizens who would like to, for example, make purchase decisions that are more climate friendly in a way. So these services can target different stakeholders, including policymakers, but not only policymakers. And the primary aim is to use data in order to influence climate action in cities and measure or monitor the impact of actions that are being taken.
So first you map all the existing services and you understood probably what are the gaps, right? Where you could create new services, right? And I understood that you are prototyping, or you are kind of giving advice of where should we address? I mean, what type of new services do we need?
Yes. So benchmarking was the first study that we did to understand what services exist. We developed a typology of services, and then we started doing first ideation workshops. So we were trying to understand how different stakeholders see the climate action system, including scientists themselves and then policymakers in cities, also some businesses who are providing these services. So we did ideation workshops, and after ideation workshops, we developed some preliminary prototypes or prototype concepts. And now we had been testing those concepts in the past year. And as of now, we're developing one prototype with the help of a master's student who is visualizing some data from ICOS database, and then we are going to present a kind of partly working prototype, as the name implies, it's a prototype, but also a portfolio of what kind of services can be developed or needs to be developed for monitoring the impact of climate action in cities.
One of the things that I guess you have been digging is how policy is made in cities, right? Because you need to understand. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm going to give a kind of quite high level picture because this changes from city to city. But essentially, in cities, there are scientists who work with climate scientists. And there are also policymakers in cities who may or may not closely work with the scientists in the cities. Generally, there is this kind of flow of scientific information is a little bit indirect to the policymaker. So scientists work with scientists. They, their aim is to understand how much emissions there are and how much emissions are reduced, and whether, that reduction can be attributable to any particular operation in a city. And policymakers essentially are interested in the impact that the actions that they have proposed. So they want to know how much of the emissions are reduced compared to previous times. But what happens is scientists do their work. There's generally a kind of third party who amalgamates emissions related data and reports to policymakers infrequently, meaning every 6 months, or more often it's once a year. So then policymakers receive information about how much emission reductions are achieved in a kind of delayed way. We identify this as a very interesting problem. And this is also a service opportunity. How can data be more directly related to policy making so that there is not this kind of delay, and policymakers can more frequently monitor the impact of actions, essentially. Yeah.
But what do we need so this to happen, right? Because till now, the data from most of the research infrastructures is mainly used by scientists, right? And as you know, we would like to see that this data is also widely used for policymakers. So in your opinion, what is the step that we have to do in order that policymakers can use this data?
Policymakers need services that communicate in an understandable manner, generally, ideally, visually, how much emission reductions are achieved, and ideally, again, by what kind of actions that are in place. Climate data can be very granular, very, very granular, but in policymaking, such granularity is not necessarily desirable. So there is a need for understanding what level of granularity policymakers need, and then create those services that actually use the data, but produce understandable outputs on the basis of the desired granularity level by policymakers.
So one issue is the granularity of the data, but you also recently wrote a paper giving recommendations of the design of climate data tools. So what is, in your opinion, important in these, when we design these tools, that they are not meant only for researchers in natural science?
That is correct. And also in our research, we have found that there is a need for services, not only in translating data for policymaking purposes, but also for cities to learn from each other, for example, and share information and share best practices. In that sense, there is a need for design, research, and practice, because we do put on the table certain skills and knowledges that help with understanding the perspectives of different stakeholders in relation to how they see the climate policymaking ecosystem, and help different stakeholders to understand each other, and also on that basis facilitate those stakeholder groups to co-create these ideas. So in a way, the services need to be designed, and of course we are involved in the design of service prototypes, but what is happening there is we are more in a facilitator mode, trying to figure out how we can find a common ground between what scientists are capable of and what they want to kind of progress scientific knowledge, and what policymakers need. And in that sense, we are playing, in a way, a knowledge co-creation facilitator role as well, if it makes sense.
Perfect. So let's say that now we are going to write together a new proposal for a project. So what could be the ideal, what would be your dream future for a project that you could not, always when the projects are coming to an end, we understand what we could have done or what we would like to do next, right? So what would it be?
Well, my dream project would be so that it's definitely longer than 4 years. And rather than science first, we actually enter into the project with a design first mentality. So first, generating an understanding of what is needed from the point of view of policy action in cities, and then feeding it back to scientific work, so that scientific work can be directed towards policymaking needs. I am not saying that science should be in the service of policy. I do think that there needs to be science for science sake. But when it comes to climate policy making and action monitoring, because we're in a very, very critical moment, I really would like to see a project that starts with, first of all, understanding the need of societal stakeholders, how they would want to make use of scientific knowledge, and then translating this need into scientific innovation goals. That would be my dream project. So, for example, 6 years, 2 years of it is the fuzzy front-end, design-led research to identify what are the pressing needs when it comes to action monitoring in cities, and then sitting down, facilitating research idea generation with scientists and creating those research projects that would directly address those needs. Because currently what is happening is, and this is not only in our project, but in majority of EU-funded project, there is a mandate for making scientific innovation relevant for societal change. And this is, of course, a good mandate, but on the other hand, I think the timing needs to be a little bit different so that an understanding of what is actually needed in the ground can be developed first to feed into research idea generation.
This interview is part of the list Ciencia y Diseño, Diseño Sostenible, Finlandia y Diseño, Design in the Public Sector, and D&D in English. Even though the list has their titles in Spanish, content can be found also in English and in Portuguese. All the episodes in English are in the list D&D in English that can be found from our website, in YouTube, and in Spotify. If you're looking for something and you cannot find it, you can always contact me. Idil made a great point. As design researchers, we can study what policymakers need. For ICOS Cities, that means working with local leaders, like city planners or climate officers. But this idea isn't just for cities. Other projects, as the one in which I am involved, focus on national or EU-level policymakers instead. There is a big opportunity here. If we really understand their challenges, we can better design tools and services for them. I can imagine, for example, a clear dashboard for climate data, or workshops to help policymakers and experts to collaborate, or simpler ways to explain complex issues. The key here is to talk to them, observe how they work, and test ideas together. Let's continue listening to Idil. She has much more to tell us. I wanted to ask you about your work in you are one of the board members of Finland Futures. What are you doing there?
Finland Futures Academy is a consortium of Finnish universities, and the aim is to provide futures education. So what is happening there is essentially we are developing cross-university curriculums for university students to be able to take futures studies related courses. That's the aim of Finland Futures Academy.
And you do courses in which people from different universities can take part?
That is correct. So all of the universities in the consortium offer courses into this curriculum. The kind of basic courses are offered by Turku University because they have the Finland Futures Research Center there, and of course a lot of expertise in futures education and research. So they provide some fundamental courses, and then all of the other universities have future studies related courses. And Aalto is offering a range of courses. One of them is a course that I am teaching.
Which one?
Well, it is part of our Creative Sustainability Master's program, and it's called Critical and Transformative Futures.
Thanks a lot. I wanted to ask you also, if we want to read about long-term systemic transformations and the type of research work that you do, what can we read, see, watch? What do you recommend?
Yes, well, there is quite a large body of work in relation to sustainability transformations. Even that as a keyword in a simple Google search would give a lot of hits. There are, I guess, specific journals, academic journals, but academic journal articles are not necessarily interesting from a practice point of view. Specifically about, I think, cities. I find Urban Futures studio in Utrecht quite interesting. And then in my research group, there are a couple of projects that are doing research that is about sustainable transformations. One project is, for example, finishing, which was Strategic Research Council funded project on how to orchestrate societal stakeholders in order to move towards eco-welfare state. So the good stuff. Well, I guess I have authors that I follow, but new authors come out. For designers, maybe, actually, yes. Very recently, as of yesterday, Transition Design Institute website has been launched. And the aim of that website is to collect transition design related resources in one place. The one aim of it. I will try to find a link and put it in the chat, because I think this is really exciting, because this is directly relevant to societal transformations and design intersection. So here we go. And I think, this could be a very good starting point to find good stuff that relates to sustainability transformations, but from a design angle.
Perfect. So now we will open the stage. Yes, Virpi has a question. Do you want to open the mic and do it? Because it's just nicer if you can.
Yeah, so hello, I'm Virpi, and I was just pondering, because I love wicked problems and complex ideation, and talking about sustainability and like future work must be something like it. So whenever you go workshopping, you mentioned that you had an ideation workshop. What have you found as key elements in the workshop in order to create something that is concrete to move forward with?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question, Virpi. So I think my first answer, and this is not going to be a popular answer, and I'll explain why. My first answer is not to, in one workshop, not to rush to definition of actions. I think initial workshops should be really aiming to open the space for discussion, for enabling different stakeholders to start to understand where each other is coming from. So I think it's really important to set that scene, to create a space for people to start leaving their very siloed way of looking at a problem, through their professional mandate and through their disciplinary background, to understand the ecosystem of the problem together. I think that should be the first step. And this is, of course, not very popular, because in practice, we are, in a rush to reach to initially, okay, what do we do? And then move on to moving something quite concrete. But I do think that for truly transformative projects to emerge, we really need that space opening and allowing, different vocabularies to be negotiated and understood. Also, there are conflicting interests quite often among stakeholders. I mean, this conflict may not necessarily be a hostile conflict, but for example, in a project like ICOS Cities, atmospheric scientists primarily want to advance atmospheric science, and this is very normal. Policymakers want tools that use scientific knowledge that is going to be easy for them to understand and therefore to make decisions. So these are conflicting interests. So that space needs to be opened first. And I find quite kind of classical approaches like, visioning together quite useful to transcend. First of all, transcend the temporal limitation, because we are very accustomed to thinking very short term, and there are good reasons for that. But for transformation related work to happen, we need people to start to expand their time horizon. So visioning is good for that, and visioning is also helpful for people to not only intellectually but also emotionally start to engage with the topic, and then start to have conversations that actually give them insights about how every other different type of stakeholder who also owns this wicked problem sees the situation. So I would say that, first opening the space is really important. And then, in the following workshops, more kind of output-oriented processes can be followed.
Thank you a lot for your answer. And it came to me a follow-up question, because I understood that you trained yourself as a facilitator, right?
Well, I am a professionally trained facilitator. I did my facilitation training when I was doing my PhD, when I needed to run workshops and I had no idea how to do that. I mean, there is this kind of convention that designers are, good facilitators. But I do recommend every designer who is involved in facilitating workshops to get some facilitation training, because facilitation is a profession on its own. There are tips and tricks and attitudes and postures in that profession that design facilitators can benefit a lot from.
Where did you do your facilitation training?
Well, I was in New Zealand doing my PhD at the time. So I did my training in a company called Zenergy. Zenergy also does training in Europe, but not very frequently. I did 3 levels of training. One was beginner, and then, intermediate, and then advanced. And Zenergy is a general facilitation training company. The training is about giving skills and knowledges to facilitate groups of any kind. So it's very, very, in a way, widely applicable. And also there are different genres in facilitation. So facilitation training genres also differ. Many facilitation trainings are geared towards teaching a particular method of facilitating. Those methods are, yes, good to have in the toolbox, but how I learned, or what I learned in my facilitation training, is that tools are tools. And the important thing is the attitude and posture of a facilitator in, developing skills to sense where the group is at, and pulling tools and methods from a large toolbox on the basis of that sensing. So in that sense, learning about tools and methods is good, but I do really recommend group facilitation training as a kind of basis. And Zenergy teaches critical facilitation, which means, facilitation that is reflexive, that is aware of its own influence. Yeah, but there are other, of course, places and companies that do give quite good group facilitation training as well.
Perfect. So I will open the stage for more questions from you. Taina, would you like to open your mic and tell us?
This has been very, very interesting, this opening the space perspective. And I was wondering, related to the facilitating sessions, that do you find it different when the participants are on the civil servant's role and not to be representing them as a citizen? How to facilitate that? Do you have any tips related to this?
It's a very specific question, and I have not studied that question, in any kind of depth. So the question is whether I find civil servants operating differently in workshops compared to people representing citizens. Well, I really cannot answer that question. And I don't think there can be a generic answer to this question because civil servants are citizens, and then citizens representing citizens can also be civil servants, and there are different types of citizens and civil servants. So I really don't have an answer to that question, but it's very important to have people who are, whether they're civil servants or representing citizens, who are knowledgeable about the topic to a certain extent and who are passionately advocating the perspective, whether they're civil servants or just people representing citizens. I think that's what really matters. Finding people who know the problem from the perspective of the citizens and who are passionate to advocate the citizen perspective, regardless of whether they're civil servants or.
And I asked this because in the company, which includes of experts of several kind of experts, and they bring their experience and the role that they are representing every session and workshop, and how to let the spaces open to have any kind of dialogue.
Yeah,
and the future that will last several years and not just 4 years.
Well, so in the context of sustainability transformations related workshops, I think it's important to find a balance between representation of expertise and representation of human. And it's quite difficult for people to step out of their expertise hats. But there are approaches that can be used. And I do think that future visioning can be quite potent in making, helping people to make that shift in a workshop that they, participate as with their professional capacity, helping them to expand themselves, the self that they bring into the workshop, not just the expert, but the whole person needs to be there. So visioning workshops can help with that.
We went from the granularity of facilitation, the granularity of data, and to the big issues of long-term system transformations. I wanted to finalize with a wide question about where is your research going? Like, what's the new directions that are taking?
Well, I mean, ICOS is not the only project that I have. Another project I have is about negotiating needs of humans and more than humans in urban context. So both projects are coming to an end, and I am about to open a postdoctoral position for design for urban sustainable transformations, and it's going to be built up by a prospective postdoctoral researcher on the basis of building on what we have done so far, but kind of taking what we have done to new directions. So I am open and I don't have a very kind of particular agenda, but I am personally quite interested in the relationship between imagination, particularly citizen imagination, activating it, and then making it part of more formal processes that happen in countries, in cities that deal with transformation. So that's one area that I would like to dig into a little bit more.
Idil proposed to take facilitation seriously. Facilitation, it's not just about running meetings or workshops, it's a core design skill, and we can train ourselves to be better at it. Why? Because good facilitation helps people think together. It unlocks ideas. In the case of our collaboration with policymakers, this could have a huge impact, because they deal with complex problems every day. If we as designers study how to facilitate well, we can help them work better. We know, as we have been talking about facilitation in many other interviews, that facilitation isn't neutral. The way we guide conversation shapes outcomes, so we should take this seriously. Test it, improve it. Because when we facilitate well, we don't just support decisions, we help people to commit to them. As always, the music of this podcast is by Antonio Zimmerman. Sound design is by Julian Pereira. This podcast is published with Creative Commons license with attributions. This was Diseño y Diáspora. You can follow us on social media channels in YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky, or visit our website. Remember to recommend us and recommend our books. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.